Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin with Jurassic Magic, and we got some exciting news for the new Spider-Man set, and we got a ton of cards spoiled, and correct me if I'm wrong, most of these cards are from the starter decks, so they're not going to be uber powerful besides a couple. There are also some other cards that were legends that got spoiled yesterday too. I'm super excited to talk about all these, but before I dive any further into these spoilers, if you want to go help out support the channel, I do have a couple affiliate links with my Patreon. If you want exclusive perks and early access to videos, come by and check out Patreon. I also do have an affiliate link with Baron of Dice. They have some great dice like this, almost like the size of my fist. And if your opponent is getting a little bit annoying, you could just throw it at them and knock them out. I wouldn't actually do that, but this really does have some weight to it. But it is a pretty cool accessory nonetheless. I also do have some pretty cool deck boxes that I've used myself that are really cool. They're fully detachable. So those shoutouts out of the way, let's talk about the spoilers for Spider-Man. So in this video, I'm not going to cover every individual card that was spoiled. Most of them were from the starter kits, so most of them are kind of underpowered anyways. I'm going to talk about some cards that are personally some of my favorite that will have some commander use for sure. There are a lot of neat cards though from the starter deck. I'm going to talk about some of the rares and mythics. Something like Amazing Alliance is essentially just an upgraded version of an Anthem. Creatures you control get +1/+1. Whenever you attack with one or more legendary creatures, you gain that much life, so this is almost like a life gain deck. Of course, you do have Spider-Man Peter Parker itself being a life gain commander for 3 and 2 white. That's flying, and whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains indestructible until end of turn, so this could actually be a pretty good Voltron life gain commander in a way, because giving indestructible to creatures that have a lot of equipment or aura to them can be pretty useful. So this one is pretty neat. I think it's definitely a little bit overcosted for what it's doing, but I still think it's okay. Every little bit of incidental life gain can help you give indestructible to your creatures, but let's move on and talk about Future Flight. You have an enchant creature. When this aura enters, draw 2 cards. So already 4 mana, draw 2 cards is okay. Again, not the best, but then again, you do enchant creature, gets +2/+0 and has flying, so that could be useful to evade some blockers. But of course, this is a starter deck card along with Spider-Man 2029 Miguel O'Hara. And this is one of my favorite Spider-Man, by the way, so I might be gushing over this card and the card later on. But when it enters, return up to 1 target creature to its owner's hand, so a bounce effect that's blinkable. That could be pretty useful, and of course, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card. So this is pretty nice overall. You are getting card draw in the command zone, and of course a blinkable option to return target creature to its owner's hand. This could be useful in cases where somebody has a blocker. You put this down, you return that blocker to its owner's hand, and then you swing at that person and draw a card, so that could be useful. So this version is kind of decent. I mean, not the greatest thing in the world, but it is a pretty cool concept of a blink option with card draw. But let's move on and talk about the black colors with lethal protection. I'm kind of going order of Uberg. You destroy target creature, return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is a destroy spell along with getting a card from your graveyard to your hand. That is okay, of course. This is not the best, but I do love the art. And the same can be applied for Venom Eddie Brock. And I gotta say, this is one of the coolest art pieces I've seen from this set so far. I just love the way Venom looks in this art piece. And I think this could be pretty decently powerful as a Voltron commander. For 4 and 2 black, it has Menace, and whenever another creature dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on Venom. If that creature was a villain, you draw a card. So of course, this is leading into a sacrifice build. You could use a lot of edicts to make sure creatures your opponents control die, and you get 1/1 counters on Venom, and of course they were villains. You get the added bonus of drawing a card if you use something like Symbio Spawn. When this creature dies, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life, and since it's a villain, you get that added bonus of drawing a card with Venom. I also like the added bonus of Grendel, Spawn of Null. I think it's just a cool touch, adding a lot of different symbiotes into the mix. But let's move along and talk about Ghost Spider Gwen Stacy. I honestly love the name of Spider-Gwen instead of Ghost Spider. I know it's part of the comics, but it is just my opinion, even though technically she wouldn't have her name in her secret identity. Besides that point, for 3 and 2 red, this has Menace, and when it attacks, she deals X damage to the defending player, where X is the number of attacking creatures, so this is a good card in a go wide strategy. And of course, if you have double the treble, double the power of each creature you control until end of turn, you can really amplify the damage of each creature that is swinging in for damage. So this one's okay. I like this in a go wide strategy. Of course, red is known to have a lot of creatures that go wide with goblins, so Ghost Spider is pretty good, probably better in the 99 for sure. But let's move along and talk about Spider-Man Miles Morales, and this one is quite powerful. I think this is the most powerful one out of the bunch, at least in my opinion, because it's a great overrun effect. For 4 and 2 green, it has Vigilance and Trample, so it can swing in, and it doesn't happen to be tapped when it does swing in. And whenever Spider-Man enters or attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. Those creatures gain Trample until end of turn. This is very powerful in a go wide deck, because if you give it haste, you're giving your creatures 2 1/1 counters on them and trample. I think this is a very cool commander, probably better in the 99, just like Ghost Spider Gwen Stacy, but still it is pretty powerful. I also like Venom Blast. You put 2/1/1 counters on target creature you control, it deals damage equal to its power on up to one other target creature. So this is basically a great bite effect. But again, Miles Morales is a very powerful card, and I could see it being played compared to the other cards. But like I mentioned previously at the beginning of the video, each of these cards are part of the starter kit, so they're going to be more geared towards early new players, where they had their first look at Magic the Gathering and started to play it, so that's why they're a little bit more simple and not as complex. I just hope we get a more powerful Venom. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Venom, Eddie Brock. However, I do believe we're going to get a lot of different variations of a lot of different symbiotes, so I'm not too worried about that. However, I am most impressed with this new version of Venom and Miles Morales compared to all the rest of the cards, because I think they are actually pretty good in their own right. But besides that point, let's move on to the main standard set cards. And again, I'm going to focus more on rares and mythics, the cards that are going to be good for Commander. I'm not going to focus on Draft Chap necessarily. Okay, maybe besides this one with Spider-Rex Daring Dino, you know me, I love dinosaurs. I have a dinosaur in my logo, and this is essentially a powered up Colossal Dreadmaw because it has reach and ward 2 over what Colossal Dreadmaw is, and it does have the additional type of Spider Hero, but everything else is basically the same as Colossal Dreadmaw. I think this is absolutely perfect. I love it so much, and only at common too, so this might be a fun popper commander if you love the memes. Outside of this card, there's a lot of flavorful cards too, like Flip. And I try to do my best impression of that too, so I'm sorry if you had to hear that. But of course, we have the origin story of Spider-Man with the origin of Spider-Man. For 1 and a white, for the first lore chapter, you create a 2/1 spider token with reach. For the second lore chapter, you put a +1/+1 counter on creature you control. It becomes a legendary spider hero in addition to its other types. And for the last mode, target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. So this is a cool concept. It's basically showing the tale of Spider-Man and how he became Spider-Man. But of course, what's very neat about Spider-Man is there's a ton of variations of Spider-Man, like Spider-Ham, Peter Porker. For 1 and a green, when it enters, you create a food token, and it has Animals Mayhem. So basically, all these animals that are listed get +1/+1. I'm not going to read over every individual one because that'll take too long, but essentially it's an anthem all the while making a food token on the battlefield. This is okay. I don't see it necessarily being a commander, but I could see this being a great card for those specific kind of decks and making food tokens. Another cool, interesting card is SP Doctor, piloted by Penny. This has Vigilance, and when it enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. So this is a modified commander, where if you put 1/1 counters on different creatures, you get the added bonus of card draw when you connect with them. I will say, out of all the different versions of Spider-Man, I'm not too familiar with this one. I've only played against this card, or should I say character, in Marvel Rivals, where this is so annoying to deal with. And if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, she is like the tankiest thing ever, and it's so annoying to deal with. Besides that point, this is a cool modified creature commander. It's focusing specifically on the color combination of Azorius, so that is pretty neat in that aspect. But let's move on to Spider-Man 2099, and this one is pretty insane looking on the surface, but I think it's not going to be as powerful as a lot of people realize. For a blue and a red, it has the Jace kind of text. You can't cast Spider-Man 2099 during your first, second, or third turns of the game, so on the fourth turn you could play this. It has double strike and vigilance with a 2/3 body, which is okay. And at the beginning of end step, if you played a land or cast a spell this turn from anywhere other than your hand, Spider-Man 2099 deals damage equal to its power to any target. That is pretty crazy. I mean, it's not the scariest thing in the world. It's only dealing damage equal to its power, so really only 2 to any target. That is okay, but of course, if you pump it up with some pump effects in red, then you could really amplify the damage to any target. You could use cards like Roaming Throne to double that end step trigger so that you could blast 2 things, but again, 2 damage isn't really that great. I mean, for 2 mana, it's okay. However, I just really hate how you can't cast this for the first, second, or third turns of your game. To me, that is a really big downside. I mean, you could play from Exile theme, that is okay. There are some avenues that you could come across with making this commander at 2 mana, but again, playing this on a later turns makes this a little less powerful in my opinion. However, I did save the best for last. Peter Parker, the original Spider-Man, for 1 and a white. He's legendary creature, human scientist hero, which is kind of cool because it's not yet a spider, but when he does enter, you create a 2/1 green spider creature token with reach. So already this is pretty good. For 2 mana, you're coming in with 2 different bodies, and he does have an activated ability ability by paying 1 green, white, and a blue, transform Peter Parker, activate only as a sorcery, and of course he will change into the Amazing Spider-Man. And before I go into the text, I first have to mention this is a modal card because it has a mana cost of 1 green, white, and a blue. You could actually cast this from the command zone as the Amazing Spider-Man. You don't need to play the Peter Parker side if you have the mana, so that is something to note. I do like how you can play Peter Parker in the early game, get a spider out on the battlefield, then transform him later. Or on the flip side, if you have the mana already, you could just play the Amazing Spider-Man and not have to worry about the Peter Parker side. Besides that point, what does this version of Spider-Man do? He has Vigilance and Reach. That is perfect. Of course, he is Vigilant and he does have Reach because of the webs. Each legendary spell you cast that are one or more colors have web slinging, green, white, and blue. So in a weird way, this kind of reminds me of Ninjutsu. You may cast a spell for its web slinging cost if you also return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand. The ironic part is the Amazing Spider-Man won't be tapped when he attacks because he has Vigilance, so if you have other ways of tapping him, you could put in another creature for that web slinging cost. So at first I thought this would be a really cool Eldrazi commander because they'll have a lot of cast triggers. This will help negate the huge mana cost for the web slinging cost, but then I realized they have to be one or more colors, so colorless spells are not an option, which is so sad. I wish this was an option to cheat in a bunch of Eldrazi cards, but you can utilize some other creatures that have cast triggers or ETBs that are legendaries that you could swap in for tapped creatures. I especially like this in my SpongeBob deck because when you swing in with a tapped creature and after that combat, you could web sling another big giant creature that's legendary and get that legendary cascade for 3 mana instead of that huge casting cost, but still retain that casting cost of legendary cascade. So I'm super excited for the Amazing Spider-Man in my SpongeBob deck, but this can be a pretty cool commander itself. You could cheat in a lot of huge legendary creatures. I'm interested to see where this one goes. And in general, I'm super excited for the Spider-Man set. I've been a Spider-Man lifelong fan. I'm sure a lot of people have been because it's such a popular superhero. I think it's more popular than Batman, correct me if I'm wrong. But of course, I loved all the movies and read a bunch of different comic iterations of Spider-Man. So I'm super excited for the set, even though I'm not interested in Spider-Man being in Magic the Gathering. But again, the floodgates have been released and a lot of different IPs are in Magic the Gathering. So that's where we are at this point. So either way, I'm super excited for Spider-Man, but let me know down below in the comments, what do you think of this video? Are there any other cards that you are excited for? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, if you can, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And with that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.